tuned in to The Andrew Lawton Show.
Welcome back to The Andrew Lawton Show. We've been talking on and off about the UCP leadership race in Alberta. Now, this is a particularly interesting race because unlike the federal Conservative leadership race, this one is going to be deciding the premiership of Alberta, not just the leadership of the UCP. Whomever wins the leadership in October is going to go right to the premier's seat, replacing Jason Kenney, and then they'll have to try to renew that term in an election up against Rachel Notley and the NDP. And why this is an interesting dynamic is because the stakes are a lot higher. And we've seen Danielle Smith, who has been outside politics, come in and do very well, talking about the importance of really resisting the Kenney government's COVID policies, talking about Alberta sovereignty. Brian Jean, the former Wild Rose leader, actually they're both former Wild Rose leaders, he's now been elected as a UCP MLA in a by-election, very critical of Jason Kenney. He's been very critical of the COVID situation, but he's also tried to be a lot more broad in his appeal compared to Danielle Smith. And it's been interesting to see the contrast between these two. We've had Danielle Smith on the show. We've also had Rebecca Schultz on the show. Interestingly enough, I asked Leela here a while back if she would come on the show, and her campaign said, why don't you just send us a questionnaire and we'll, fill it out and send it back to you. And I'm like, well, what do I do? Just read that on my show? No. And I've asked and haven't been able to get her on. So other requests have gone to other candidates as well. But in any case, let me now bring into the program UCP MLA from up in Fort McMurray and also UCP leadership candidate, Brian Jean. Brian, good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So let's start first off with the theme of your campaign here. You're talking about autonomy for Alberta, but you're distinguishing this from the sovereignty and separation debate. So what is it that your campaign is really about, and what is it that autonomy is about in your eyes?
Well, autonomy and sovereignty are a little bit different. And, I'm not about building walls. I'm about tearing them down and bringing people together. Autonomy is about a series of freedoms, personal autonomy, my body, my choice, financial autonomy. I believe people should own houses, own businesses, have individual ownership of things. I think that's a better scenario and makes them feel freer and happier. And of course, that's part of my theme of my campaign as well. And not just financial autonomy, employment autonomy, but also community autonomy. As a Christian, I think it's very important that we protect people's rights to be able to enjoy the freedoms that they have. I, for instance, was appalled at the arrest of a pastor. Never would happen under a Brian Jean-led government ever, nor would we ever shutter churches. That's just, in my opinion, religious persecution. I thought so at the time. I continue to think that now, and it would never happen under a Brian Jean government. And that's why I wanted to make sure autonomy was clear in people's minds. I'm not interested in sovereignty or separation. I am interested in making sure that we have as many rights as we possibly can here in Alberta, for Albertans, not just for Alberta, but for Albertans. And that's why I want also more autonomy for Albertans within Canada. And that means if other Canadians get to enjoy the rights and privileges that Canada give them, we should get the same rights and privileges. And right now we don't, whether it's unemployment insurance, whether it's our pension issues, or, many different opportunities in other provinces that we don't have here in Alberta. I'm going to make sure that we have all the opportunities that any other Canadian has in any other province. And I think that's very important. And that's what it's about. It's about autonomy, about freedom, personal freedom to make choices, freedom to be without government intervention, freedom to know that you get up in the morning, that you're going to be happier and healthier. Because, I've made it very clear that the theme of my campaign is autonomy, but it's also the end goal is to be happier and healthier, to be more free, and most prosperous people in Canada and the world. And, but you want freedom? Well, if you want health and you want happiness, you have to have freedom. It's very clear. If you want to have happiness, you have to have a good healthcare system. That's very clear. You have to make sure that people are wealthy and prosperous, or else they're not going to be able to make the decisions they want as far as autonomy goes. And autonomy is about good conservative principles of people making their own decisions for their own life based on their own priorities. And that's what it's all about for me, whether it's personal choice, whether it's business community, whether it's your religious or other community. You deserve the freedom to decide what you want to decide for your future, your priorities, your community priorities, your personal priorities, your family priorities. Those things government should stay out of and other people should stay out of, and you should be able to enjoy them as much as possible. And that's what autonomy is for me. It's about staying in Canada. about trying to fix Canada. I know it's broken. There's no question. I think everybody recognizes that. But trying to fix Canada through a proper negotiation, sitting down at the constitutional table and trying to get a fair deal. Because right now we're too afraid of getting any deal at all. So we're thinking that, we're going to be pressured and frankly bullied by the bigger provinces. It's not the case. Right now is a tremendous opportunity because every province in Canada knows that they're not getting enough healthcare funding based upon what the federal government's requiring. Almost every government in Canada recognizes that the pipeline ban is absolutely an infringement on our Section 92 rights under the Constitution. And, all of these things are actually guiding our principles of change. And what I'm saying there is, in particular, I've been working on this particular passion to open up the Constitution through equalization. That was the tool we used. And, as Wild Rose leader, we talked about making sure that we could open up the Constitution so we could get to that point where more Albertans could have more autonomy and more freedoms. And we're going to push that through.
Let's talk about the equalization aspect specifically. We know that Albertans overwhelmingly voted to really reevaluate the equalization system that we have right now. And obviously the prevailing thesis is that when a province comes together like that and votes in such a way, the federal government has to negotiate. But a duty to negotiate, a constitutional duty to negotiate, is not a duty or requirement to give any concession. And the Liberals have been consistently resistant to, I think, respecting a lot of the concerns that Albertans have. So what would you do differently, or what would you do to actually get what it is that Alberta wants and needs from the federal government at that negotiating table?
I'm glad you asked that, because other candidates are talking about getting angry and what we're going to do up to a certain point, but they have no answers for what happens afterwards. So they're riling people up, getting people mad for no reason. We live in an amazing country. It's a free country, and the Constitution clearly lays out that under Section 46, if a majority of a population in a certain area is dissatisfied with the current Confederation and how they're being treated under Confederation, we can send notice after receiving a clear mandate from the people, a majority of the people, a good majority. We can send that mandate to the people under the Section 46 notice, and they have to sit down and negotiate with us. And if they don't, then we go to the Supreme Court of Canada and ask for reference. Listen, let's be clear here. I'm the only lawyer, litigator, person that spent 10 years practicing the law here in Alberta. I know how it works. I'm not guessing it. I don't have to talk to another government bureaucrat lawyer to tell me how to pursue this and how to go forward. I've spent enough time understanding, both 10 years federally as a member of parliament, as a parliamentary secretary, and as a practicing law in Alberta for 10 years. And then as a business person, I know what Albertans want. They want more autonomy, more freedom, less oversight and overwatch from Ottawa. I mean, that's where all the gatekeepers are. That's what we have to remove from.
But if the Constitution gets them to the table, what do you do at the table that will get that change you need?
Get the rest of the provinces on side to get better healthcare funding, get more rights in the Senate and the House of Commons, so we actually have equal votes across the country. There are so many things that we need to change. The fiscal imbalance is clearly there. Equalization is one of those things. The rest of the provinces, the premiers are ready to go to the table over the pipeline ban. We're ready. You have to wait. Timing is everything. And we started this process as Wild Rose leader on equalization referendum. I think 6 years ago almost now. I got 3 economists from across the country to recognize that we're sending $20 billion more per year to Ottawa than we get back in services. We have to do something about it. That is absolutely essential. And right now is a great time to do it. All the other provinces are ready to sit down, and Albertans are too. But if they don't listen, if they don't agree to negotiate, where are we going to be? Well, I think Albertans are going to be angry. I know I would be if they didn't sit down and talk to me, if they just told us to buzz off. That's when we have to make the next step. And that's when Albertans get to decide whether we use every single tool in our toolbox to establish our autonomy, to establish our rights to Section 92, our resources, our people, our healthcare, our education. Some people are making up stories about Trudeau coming in here and taking our kids and forcing them to be vaxxed and at school in order to continue school. Well, folks, people are lying to you. Justin Trudeau has no ability to do anything with our kids in schools or schools. He has no ability to do so to infringe on our lives, and we have to stop listening to the chatter out there and just deal with what we need to deal with, and that is to renegotiate the Constitution so that Albertans feel they're part of Confederation. And if they don't agree to us doing that, then we're going to be using other tools that are available at our disposal. And I know what those tools are, and we will do whatever we need to do in order to get those tools to the people of Alberta and make a decision on how we go forward after that. But I don't think Canada wants to be in a position where they're going to make Albertans angry.
No, I would agree in general with that, but I'm still not getting a sense of the how, because I agree that getting to the table is itself an important step in the process here. And I also appreciate that you're saying, let's not look at equalization in isolation. Let's also talk about healthcare. Let's also talk about representation. So if you're going to have this full-scale discussion, what are the red lines for you? Because a negotiation is give and take. What are the things that you will absolutely not compromise on? And what are the things that you really expect the government to hand over that are, without that, in your view, not a real good faith negotiation?
Well, I look at this the same as I look at a corporate negotiation or a relationship negotiation, and that is people sit down at the table and order to try to settle things, to solve things, so they can move on together. I don't think we have to look at a divorce and go nuclear immediately. That's what some people are suggesting. I think what we need to do is sit down and negotiate. What forces them to negotiate? The opportunity to continue on as the prime minister and the premier in government. That's what helps them continue the opportunity.
But I'm asking
if
what
they don't
happens
listen to
at
us,
the negotiating table. Let's assume that we've gotten there. What do you do at that table that gets you the changes that you're promising Albertans?
Find all the things that bring us together as a country in each province, because like I said, there's a lot of things that people are dissatisfied with right now. There's some things they're satisfied with. For instance, PEI has about 40,000 people or so per MP. Alberta has 120,000 people per MP. Well, PEI is probably satisfied with that, but places like Ontario aren't. Places like Quebec aren't. They're never going to be satisfied with their representation no matter what happens, unless they're on their own. Let's be clear. We have to find that commonality, those things that bring us together, so we can figure out how to go forward. The Supreme Court of Canada, in the reference case in Quebec, has laid out a path. Now, I will tell you, the Laurentian elite, the Ottawa entitled, they're the ones that made sure, along with the Supreme Court of Canada, that there was a path ready for the people of Quebec to decide on how they wanted to go forward. And what would happen for the people of Quebec if indeed there was a 51, 60% leverage like we had here in Alberta that said, we want to open up the Constitution, we want to change, we want to leave. Well, the Supreme Court of Canada laid out a path, according to Section 46 of the Constitution, giving notice, legal notice, by the way, of the necessity to negotiate that path for the people of Quebec. Little did they understand that the people of Alberta would be using that same path in order to force negotiations and to take the next step and find those tools that we need to do. I want to have our own pension plan. I want to have our own unemployment insurance plan. Why? Because right now we're paying far more than we need to. That's an unmentioned equalization. We're paying far more in our pension plan and in our unemployment insurance plan because of our nature of our population and how much we work and how much we make compared to other places. Well, I understand that, but that's still equalization. The people that work longer hours need more support systems. They need better daycare for their children. They need to make sure that they have better mental supports, better health supports. We need more staying here in Alberta to support the type of lifestyle we have. And they need to stop taking that $20 billion a year and spreading it out to their friends. That will be the first thing we deal with. But there's so many other things, and the rest of Canada are ready. But who forces this? Well, just like anybody forces it, we have a judge. In cases of a divorce or mediation or separation or a corporate commercial contract that needs to be renegotiated, we have a judge. This is the rule of law that we're guided by here in Canada. And the rule of law is guided substantially or primarily by the Supreme Court of Canada. They will make sure that Albertans have the rights as they're supposed to under the Constitution, and they will make sure that we have the opportunity to have that discussion about what the next step is to renegotiate the Constitution, because they need to protect that for the people of Quebec. We're just going to use it first. And we really appreciate them laying out the path for us and being clear on how we can go about it to get our fair treatment from the people of Canada. And frankly, it's not the people of Canada, it's more the Liberal politicians from out east. They seem to want to pick on Albertans because it gets them more votes there. And I know it does. And that's what disgusts me is right now the Prime Minister and the Liberal caucus are beating up Albertans and primarily the West, rural West, in order to get votes in Quebec and Ontario and Eastern Canada. Now, who wants to support a Prime Minister or a Premier that divides people? We need to find the things that bring people together. And that's what I'm going to do as a Premier of Alberta. I'm going to bring people together, find the things that we have in common and instead of dividing us. And that's where we need to go with our path in the future, is bringing Albertans together to be solid, to be strong, because we've got a lot of work ahead of us.
You mentioned earlier, Brian, that you significantly and strongly oppose the jailing of pastors, the shuttering of churches, and I think that's a very important position to take. What about some of the broader COVID policies here? Because I know Premier Kenney, when he sort of addressed why he thought the membership turned on him, he thought it was entirely about the COVID situation, and I think there are some disagreements about whether that was really the limitation of the frustrations. But vaccine passports, could you take them off the table entirely as Premier?
Yes, for the need for vaccine passports in Alberta, 100% gone.
And restrictions in general, capacity restrictions?
I want to be clear that religious persecution is what happened here in Alberta. I really believe that. As a Christian, as a born-again Christian, I would never do that to any religion because that is religious persecution. It's unacceptable. Lockdowns as a whole are extremely hurtful to people's mental and physical health. It is extremely hurtful and painful for families and for businesses, and it should not happen. So, for me, I think lockdowns should be a resort that we never, ever fall into. And to be honest, I'm the only candidate that's come forward with, yes, we will not have lockdowns. But not only that, I will bind future governments, future premiers, to make sure if they try to do a lockdown, which we can never stop. Let's be clear. I can tell you what I'm going to do or not do, but I can't tell you what the next person's going to do unless I put a whole bunch of blockades and barricades in front of them. And I propose that. People are not watching that. But what I proposed is let's make sure that every emergency act, anytime anybody has the opportunity to open up and close things, open up the emergency act and close down people's businesses or homes, well, they have to make sure that they're transparent on those decisions. So no more cabinet secrets, which is going on right now and has been going on for 2 years. No more cabinet secrets on that stuff at all. And just make sure that people understand why they're making the decisions, and that caucus, the government caucus, actually has to vote on it within 2 months of it being put in place and has to confirm that it's valid. And anything that happens, depending on what level of lockdown it is, there would be a judicial inquiry, a public inquiry, a huge onerous provision on future governments. And the fact that it would be transparent, cabinet decisions, I think people would change their mind very quickly about doing lockdowns because we've seen this. But is this all about lockdowns for Jason Kenney and the government? No, it's not. Let's be clear. Before COVID came on the scene, we were looking at a situation where the premier was not popular, where he was spiraling into a situation of non-confidence by the people of Alberta. And it's clear that COVID didn't help any, but we're at a crossroads right now. And if we don't renew and revitalize the party, the UCP, the NDP are going to win. And I just can't have that. I was watching from Fort McMurray as I took care of my family after leaving politics and taking care of 3 estates and my businesses. And the people of Fort McMurray mean a lot to me because obviously that's been my home for my entire life. And I think if Rachel Notley wins, we're going to lose Fort McMurray. They're going to shut down my town. They're going to shut down a lot of what's going on in Alberta. And I just can't have that happen. An overwhelming NDP majority with Justin Trudeau in Ottawa will destroy my community and my province. And I can't let that happen. That's why I did what I did. That's why I wanted to renew the party. And that's why I'm so excited about the opportunity of possibly being premier, having that privilege and being able to take Albertans to that task, to the equalization formula, to where we were going 5-6 years ago on our path. And I have passion and purpose for that. It's not just, that's good policy about lockdowns or about churches, or that's what I believe. That's what I believe. So it's not hard to put forward policies that you believe in, because those are the things that Albertans want to hear. They want to hear somebody that actually believes what they're doing, not just that they're doing it because the people are pushing that way.
Let me just ask you one final question then on that note. You talked about Rachel Notley. If you win the leadership, you become the Premier of Alberta, but you'll also have to run for re-election very soon after. There have been a lot of internal struggles in the UCP, a lot of people that have frustrations with the status quo under Premier Kenney. How confident are you that you could turn around these challenges in time to win a general election?
Well, there's been discussion about me saying I'd put Rachel Notley in my cabinet, and I can't think of anything more ridiculous than having Rachel Notley make decisions for Albertans. And me suggesting that she's going to make somehow decisions for Albertans is ludicrous. I never really understood how people interpreted that from what you actually said there. I know. What I said was, let's take the politics out of COVID because people are dying because politicians are playing politics with people's lives. Let's take the politics out of it. You know what Rachel Notley did? she took the politics out of the fire when I was the opposition leader. I asked, and she made sure that I was able to be briefed on everything. My staff knew what was going on. And all of a sudden, I was in a situation where I knew everything that was going on. Both of us were working for the people of Fort McMurray and Alberta at the time. And she totally took politics out of it because I couldn't play politics. Not that I wanted to, but some people do. Some politicians are prepared to play with people's lives in order for their own agenda. That's not acceptable. Why I wanted to do that for Rachel Notley and get her involved in COVID, only so she could listen, and she couldn't play politics because it would stop the NDP from doing so. How do you play politics when you're actually privy to all of the information and you're there when the decisions are being made? Not only do you have to keep them confidential, but you can't play the political game that Rachel Notley has been playing. And we have to look beyond just the hard and fast, passionate partisanship of politics. We have to think smart about how we do things that are better for the people. And better for the people is certainly taking the politics out of very dangerous situations. You know, Winston Churchill did it. We did it at the time of Confederation when we were drafting the Constitution. We take politics out of it because it's better for the people. And would I want to put Rachel in charge of anything? Listen, the reason why I'm back right now and I put my family life on hold and my businesses and everything else on hold is because I don't want Rachel Notley to win the next election. I will do whatever I can as the premier and the leader of the UCP within the obligations and rights that we have as politicians to make sure that Rachel Notley does not form government and make sure that we unite the conservative movement here in Alberta behind the UCP and win the next election by an overwhelming majority so we can bring in the good policies for Albertans. Because you know what? It should be for Albertans. And other people have talked about what they would do. Well, let me tell you, look at my background and see where I have done things, where I have resigned my position and gave up a paycheck in order that we can unite these parties so we can bring them together into a movement. That's what I'm interested in, because that movement should represent Albertans. And Albertans should be the beneficiary of every single decision that a premier, a cabinet, and a caucus make for them.
UCP, MLA, and leadership candidate Brian Jean. Brian, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. My pleasure as always. And great to be here. Hi to all your listeners.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.